How
Hello.
are how are you?
My God, we made it.
We did. Absolutely.
Holy crap. I'm just going to pause the recording. It's all, I will edit the video and everything. Well,
Perfect.
I probably won't enter the sound, but the intro and outro.
Yeah, fair.
Okay, so welcome, David, from Four Pillars, here to talk to me all about credit. I'm excited.
Yes.
This is episode 1.
Fantastic. I'm
Exciting, David.
really
This
glad
has
to
been
be
on
here.
this has been on my list for a year. I
We've
kept
been
putting it
talking
on the
about this
list.
for a while.
I know, right? No, glad to have you. We were just having a conversation before we went on here about what we were going to talk about, and we were both laughing because we were like, we should have just recorded this was the podcast now.
That's right.
So David, why don't you open us up with telling us a little bit about what it is that you do, what brought you to the industry you're in, and what's your why? That's a lot. That's a 3-part question. So I'll remind you what the 3 parts are.
Fantastic. My name is David Moffat. I'm a senior debt relief specialist with Four Pillars Consulting Group. Essentially what we do is we help consumers really find solutions for their debt situations. As a company, we're a little uniquely positioned in that the only person that we work for is the consumer themselves. We don't represent creditors, banks, collection agencies, none of that. Mine and the company's full focus is really to help consumers figure out their best option to deal with their debt, help them implement it, whatever that option might end up being, and then ultimately help them rebuild their credit and really their financial lives after the fact. Personally, I have a wife and a young daughter, absolutely fantastic. So that's been quite exciting, which we're filming this during COVID for people that are watching it afterwards. So getting to spend a lot more time with the family and my nice COVID haircut, of course. Oh man, that's the worst thing about this. The whole reason why I got into this industry and my whole why is actually by the time I used to be in the military, and I don't know if you know this.
Yep.
But I basically was up to my eyeballs in debt by the time I was 21. Banks are very, especially when you've got that kind of secure job, they're very willing to lend money. So by the time I was 21, I had about 35, 40 grand in debt. And to make a very long story short, I got myself out of debt, developed a passion for finance, went back to school for finance, and was actually looking to get out of the military to help people with their financial investments at the time. So I was looking to become a financial planner, but then decided one day that I was going to look up some franchises and fell across Four Pillars and fell in love with their intro paragraph, which says that we exclusively represent the debtor and will never compromise that position. And it kind of resonated with me, and here we are today.
Right on. So really, your desire to go into the financial world is about your personal experience. You know this by heart, I guess, is the best way you've experienced it.
Absolutely. It's one of these things that I experienced myself, and then kind of I was looking at my surroundings. I mean, in the military, the lowest pay that you're going to get once you've been in, say, 4 years is roughly $50,000 a year, which is a pretty darn good salary, mm-hmm. Right? And half of the people I worked with were up to their eyeballs in debt and didn't know how to manage their money, and not necessarily in a negative way. You're just never taught how to manage money, right? And so I realized that was the position in the forces that was a pretty highly paid industry, I guess, or sector.
Security, good pay,
right, good benefits, everything. Yeah. So if these people are struggling, what's the rest of the world doing?
Right. Yeah, good point. Good point. So do you think, I was reading and then I was watching some YouTube videos getting prepared for this. And of course, in my world, we deal with consumers looking for an automobile that have less than perfect credit and how to use the auto loan to rehab their credit. Yep. So I'm kind of in that space a lot with you, just sort of trying to figure out what's the need. As an entrepreneur, I was always looking for, okay, where are the problems in the world? How can I be a part of solving them? And if I can do that for a living, then really I'm not working, although I work my butt off. It's a passion, right?
That's right.
So I think that's what, when we originally met, I could tell that you had a big, strong passion for just the subject matter, of course, and helping people in general, which is really cool. I think we need more of that in the world. And my philosophy on helping people is just give them the information. People are genuinely smart. But where do you think, David, we went wrong? Like, we as a society, was it in university? Like I was saying, I was looking at this podcast and I was like, they made this point where I think it's your first day, like your Frosh week, at Dal. And I distinctly remember this now. Now I'm going back like 20 years. But all the big banks are there ready to loan you money. Like, why do you want to loan me money? I work at a bar part-time.
Yeah.
Right? I got student loan debt up to here. I don't even know what this is. And I remember actually my father saying, Kim, you got to pay that back. I had it was like $2,200 card. And geez, I went on a trip with the girls. You know what I mean? Nobody told me I had to pay it back. I was like, well, I'll get to it. My dad's like, no. You got to make that payment every month, sweetheart. So how do we get this way? Like, how do we get there?
I think that's like a 3-day conversation. But it's interesting because I have this conversation a lot with clients, because you think about it, right? There's big corporations out there that in order to make something profitable, they only need you to spend an extra $10 a year, let alone a transaction, right? Now you think of like I'm going to call it Walmart, right? Imagine, I bet you that Walmart has a division of PhDs that are specialists in behavioral finance, and their whole job is to make every consumer just spend $10 extra a year, right? And for them, that ends up being, millions and millions, if not billions of dollars. And then you start thinking, okay, how many other companies are doing these types of things, right? And I think the game is just really set against us now, let alone the lack of financial literacy in the schooling system. And I know they do a little bit of it, but it's certainly not to the degree that it should be. But you think once you actually get into the real world, the way that things are sold to you, you walk into a store and they've got, yellow sales tags. Well, why is it yellow? Well, it's because they've done studies that show that yellow makes you realize that, oh, this is a great deal, right? Like, I mean, it's all types of stuff like that really starts to add up, where people think you need something. I mean, there's a whole industry that's called copywriting, that's to basically make text inviting to people so that they connect with it. So really the whole game's against us. You'll never win. Right.
Yeah. It's creating you need the latest this, you need that. When you see people come and look for help from you, are you seeing a lot of people that, they just didn't care, or did they get themselves, stuck? I mean, I know sometimes, I think the shame that comes with it, certainly in my world, is people feel shameful that somehow that they have failed. And I'm looking at them like, your father got sick with cancer and you had to take care of him for a while, so you couldn't work. Like, that's a life problem how do we get there? How does that happen? And what is it that you're seeing with your clients? Like, is it more of life happened to me and I'm a good person and I'm intended on paying my bills? Or is it like, we just don't care as a society?
Yeah, it's really interesting that you asked this question, because from a public perception, a lot of people think that people that are struggling with debt are just really bad with money. But, like we just shared 2 stories about, you went out with the girls and spent $2,200 on a card, right? Right. I was 21 and had a whole pile of debt, and it's not, I don't think we did that intentionally. I just think that we were not necessarily as educated at the time about how to effectively manage money. So I don't think we recklessly spent it intentionally. Right. But really, by and large, the majority of the people that we see that really need to go through more invasive restructuring, where they, might pursue bankruptcies and proposals and credit counseling and these types of things, they typically have a very unfortunate life incident. So whether it's a job loss, a medical issue, a separation, or something along those lines that really, what I like to call, causes a catalyst. So it causes either an increase in expenses or a drastic decrease in income. Which basically causes this snowball to start, right? And when
wait now, this is a really good point.
Yes.
I've never heard it put that way. It was as simple as something happened that caused an increase in my debt or a decrease in my income.
Yeah.
Like, it's really that simple. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I had to cut you off, but I
No.
wanted to really like put the pin in that because I find it now. Sometimes I can get in trouble this way because my people are the people that I can help. And since the beginning in the automobile business, I've always had a disdain for a particular type of client that would not be so kind. Okay. I know it's hard to imagine that a particular client
Sure.
might not be so kind coming into a dealership. I mean, I'm going way back 20 years now, but I always like to cater to people that came to me as a professional and said, Kim, we need help in this area. And that's why I gravitated towards more helping people with their credit and getting financing first for their automobile loan and looking at how can you use that to rehab your credit. And in that, sometimes I think that there's still this thought process. I don't think I know it because I hear it. I hear it in some of the circles, just in the world in general. And I understand why customers can feel nervous or uncomfortable to go to someone like you when they get into trouble, or they're not even sure if they're in trouble, quite frankly. I mean, I'm sure you see that. I see that all the time. I'm not sure if I can get an auto loan. I don't know what I qualify for. I have no idea what interest rate I'm going to be at. I don't even know if I can afford it, Kim. But it takes a while for me to break down those walls. And I'm wondering, is it more, is it the normal out there that there's still so many people that put that on other people, like, oh, you should have known better, or you should have look at me and my good credit, you know what I mean? And I think that that's really made sometimes some people think that they're less than. So how do you get past that when you're talking to your clients, or do you not see that at all? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, we certainly see it without a doubt. I mean, debt brings a lot of embarrassment, a lot of shame. It brings a lot of pride issues. So a lot of people don't necessarily want to go through a debt restructuring process because they just might be embarrassed, right? They might be ashamed. But when you look at the statistics, a decent amount of the population, when you actually look at it, ends up having to restructure their debt anyway, right? And I mean, there's been studies that have shown that, half of Canadians are living paycheck to paycheck. It's something like $60 or $200 away from financial difficulties. 80% of the population carries debt. And so it's interesting, because what I try to teach my clients is to just tell people you're broke. Even if you're not broke, even if you're saving $1,000 a month, I don't care. Just say you're always broke. And
hey, that's a good one. Wait now. I like these little nuggets. What did you just say? You say your clients like if somebody approaches them and they're like, because people do, they fall into the trap of, oh, I'll apply for that credit card, or just because, I don't know. I tend to do it myself. Somebody could sell me this, like, what was it that I was in this mall in the States, and they're classic for, I was walking by and he grabbed my hand. And he was like, oh, pretty lady, me make your hand soft. And I was like, oh, next thing you know, I'm buying this $50 jar of Sandy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was
absolutely.
Nice. Is that what you mean though? Like, just tell people I can't afford it.
Yeah, I can't afford it. It could be that, or it could be, you get invited to go out to a restaurant or out to drinks after work, and you can't afford it. Like, it's not a secret, right?
Right.
People that are struggling financially typically know, not necessarily that they're struggling to the extent that they are, but they don't have free cash.
Yeah.
And so just by implementing, I'm broke, eventually people just get it, right? And you got to remember,
go against our whole
oh,
thing,
absolutely.
That everybody always wants to put this appearance on. They've got all the stuff, they got the latest phone. They live in the white picket fence, 2.5 kids, matching Lopi sweaters, yellow dog.
Yeah, but this is the point, right? That's all designed. Right. Like it's. I don't think that as a society we created that. I think truly that it's like the diamonds are forever type thing, right? Yeah. That's a marketing ploy.
Yeah.
Right.
They ain't forever.
Right. But everybody knows that expression, though, right?
That's right.
And so you start thinking of that, like this whole. And I can't blame companies, because companies are out there making a profit. They're employing people. They're giving people livelihoods. And in order to do that, they have to turn a profit. And in order to turn a profit, you have to sell a product, et cetera, et cetera. So there's always going to be an element of marketing. But now, I think it's back in the 80s, the average budget or so had, I think it was 8 items on it. You know, you had your rent, you might have had your car payment, and your food and that type of stuff, right? I think the average budget now has like 20 line items like that. It just goes to show how many
Yeah.
more things we consume. So it's very difficult. And what was once a want is almost now a necessity. I mean, could you imagine living without some form of transportation? Now, you know, Halifax is lucky to have, you know, a bus system, but if you live even 10 minutes outside of the city, that bus system isn't that great.
Totally.
Right. And half the population lives outside of HRM.
That's right. That's
right. Could you imagine living without the internet?
Mm.
Well, the internet's $100 a month almost.
Right.
Right. So we constantly have these extra expenses that end up getting added on, I think, for the benefit of quality of life as a whole.
Right.
But it's certainly easy to see why people fall back, right? And
so do you think
get into struggles.
do you think that people are well, this is a good segue actually into COVID-19 and where we were at. I mean, my stats are showing me from a credit perspective, Canadians, 40% of Canadians have a credit score of 650 or less pre-COVID-19.
Yeah.
All the layoffs that are happening right now, people working some, you know, we are seeing a lot of people picking up part-time jobs, which is interesting because I think genuinely people want to work.
Yeah.
So, you know, do you think these line items that, like you say, and it's a great way to put it. I mean, I live that too every day. Everyone does. It's like, well, I make this much, and out of this much, what am I going to dump? My iPhone? I can't dump my iPhone. Like, I need that to work. That's
and
like,
you're probably in a contract anyway with it. So even if you want to dump it, it's going to cost you $500-600, right?
That's right. And now it's as expensive as a car payment, for the love of God. We compare
Absolutely.
that all the time. People are like, I need this budget for my car. And I say, what's your cell phone bill? Because we need to bring that up for a car payment. But so you've got your phone, you've got where you live, you got to eat, you got to feed the kids, you got recreation. Yeah.
You tuned out on me there.
You know, like our people, you know, I don't know, I'm guessing based on what I'm seeing in credit bureaus, but are people compensating with other debt, like credit cards and
I think they have to.
Yeah.
I think at a certain point in time, they're going to have to, right? Because, you know, the emergency response benefit right now with COVID, they're giving you a pre-taxed amount. So you're going to end up having to pay tax on it. So, you know, the $2,000 that you're getting is really $1,600 at a maximum, right? Now you can imagine that the average household in Nova Scotia, I think it's like $75,000 a year, right? So now you've brought that household income from $75,000 to a maximum now of, I'm just going to say 40 grand, right? So where's that extra money coming from? You know, and remember, 50% of Canadians are living paycheck to paycheck, 80% carry debt, 60% are $200 away from financial crisis, right? So it has to come off of debt. I think that people right now are financing their lives, and I don't blame them for it. There's no choice right now, right? Yeah. You have to. So it's going to be very interesting to see kind of credit bureaus in the future and see how people get impacted, and see how banks deal with it in the past. Because I was talking with a mortgage broker friend of mine, and I'm like, you know, what's going to happen when you've got a whole bunch of people with a very, very large history of missed payments on their bureaus? Are they going to qualify for financing?
Right.
You know, and hopefully, yes, hopefully banks are going to understand that this is a very isolated period of time, but they might not.
Right.
Right. And that's the scary part.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's really shocking. It really is hitting home having the conversation with you right now when, you know, you're right. The emergency fund, you know, you can see why people are like, we have to get back to work, because how long, even if you were in a good financial situation, you were responsible, we're 6 weeks into this right now. So legit, there's people just trying now. Hopefully a lot of their debts were relieved in certain ways. You know, my car debt, was put off for 3 months.
Yep.
And, hopefully people have tapped into, working with their landlords and their, and their mortgages if they're not working right now. But you can see, $200 away from, what did you say? Financial, like, that's it.
Financial crisis. Yeah, absolutely. Right.
So you can see how making a dip in income that significantly would really shake up a family and certainly put people in debt or in a desperate situation because they can't get it.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. Not everybody gets approved for that line of credit, that safety measure. Not many people have that savings that everybody says, oh, you need to have savings. Well, in reality, here's the thing, David, like I see incomes all the time, $1,800 a month. Mm-hmm. $1,800 a month. You take away food, rent, a car, like you gotta.
And I know this podcast might be going out to more than just Nova Scotia, but Halifax is actually the third most expensive city to live in all of Canada when you factor in income and expenses.
Wow.
Right? I should clarify this, it's when you take out home ownership, because remember, it's like 60% of people still rent, right? Right. But the rental market right now is crazy. It's crazy high. You look at our cost of food, everything like that, the amount of wages we get paid. I'm assuming that, somebody that works job A in Halifax, if they were to move even to Ontario, anywhere in Ontario, would probably see a 25% increase in their pay just because they're in Ontario. Right. So it's really tough right now. And you're completely right. How do people survive on that income and get everything that they need? Right. And sometimes even things they want. This is another thing that I have a little bit of a gripe with, right? Is everybody talks about how you just, you should be completely responsible and make sure that you fight tooth and nail to do things. As humans, we have to be sane, right? And to be sane, you have to do things you like sometimes. So I don't think it's realistic to expect people to do nothing that they believe is fun, right? Sure. So I think that has to be factored in as well.
You gotta, that's what life is for, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So solutions. I think we're going to be facing a pretty crazy time. We're in a crazy time now. I think post COVID-19, there's a lot of people going to be wondering, okay, where do I pick up the pieces here? Like if someone was in trouble, what would you suggest is their next moves? What do they do?
This is such a big question that really depends on the
situation.
We need
a whole other podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. We're good till episode 4 now. Okay. So generic information, right? Yeah. The idea is that if somebody was struggling before COVID, which is a fairly large amount of people, right? Then the chances that COVID is going to help them is very slim, right? That's obviously common sense. And so they're probably going to be looking to deal with their debt, and they're going to have to look at something more invasive, right? And so, if they can't go to the bank because their credit's impacted before or during, the bank's not going to lend them money. And so that's really when you start looking at credit counseling programs. That's when you're going to look at proposals. That's where you might try to, wheel and deal with your creditors directly and through what's called an informal proposal. Or you might end up having to look at the bankruptcy option. I will take a note on that and say that a lot of people think they have to just go bankrupt. The majority of our clients avoid bankruptcy entirely. People just automatically think that's the only solution.
So what is it that you guys do when you meet someone? How is it that you're helping them to solve their problem?
Yeah, absolutely. So everything really starts with a consultation, right? And that's where we dive right into their situation. And kind of the process works by outlining specific to the client's situation every single option that they end up having, right? So everything from budgeting all the way to bankruptcy and everything in between, understanding.
Okay, wait now. I'm always
yeah, it's good.
Sticking my thing in here, but I like this. This is another good nugget.
It's good. Yes.
First thing we do is sit down and show our clients their options. Yeah. I love this. This is why you and I connect.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really important, right?
Super.
Because how do you make a decision if you don't know all the options?
Yes. Instead of you sitting there and saying, I'm the professional and this is what you have to do. So you guys more, you lay out, okay, this is what I see. Here's a few different avenues we could take. Sorry to interrupt.
Absolutely.
I love that.
No, absolutely. Right. So it's really diving into the nuts and bolts and into all the options they have. And then the client really gets to take it home and
be in
determine.
control.
Absolutely. And they get to decide what they want to do. If they decide to then hire us on after that, the whole goal is to assist them in whatever process they want to take, right? And so if that's assisting them in filing a proposal, we can certainly assist in that process. If that's, the bankruptcies, certainly we can help with that. If that's just helping somebody with a budget plan or guiding them towards somebody that can solve their situation, then that's the solution as well, right? Kind of we take an approach that we want people to take the right option for them as long as they understand every single option. It's really easy for me to say, this is what I think you should do, but how long have I spent with the client at that point in time? Half hour, an hour.
All of everything that's going on with them. You're not seeing it. I mean,
Absolutely.
We try to as consultants. I know that about speaking with you. I'm that way myself. I try to put myself 100% in my customers. So I'm looking through their lens as I'm trying to make the decisions with them, but you can only do so much. So I love that. That's so important. I love that. So important.
It's actually interesting that you're talking about this and kind of in the industry you're in. Oftentimes I'll come across people that might be in a vehicle that doesn't make sense anymore because they might have lost their job or income reduced, or family size has changed, et cetera, whatever the situation might be. And at a certain point in time, you ask the client, does it make sense to keep this vehicle? And oftentimes I get the answer, well, I need it. I need the minivan because I've got the 4 kids, the 3 dogs, the guinea pigs, and my wife, right? And I sit there and go, man, I grew up in this like small little tempo, right? So you can make it work, right? But it's interesting. Personal note: ever since I've had a child, I kind of understand these
minivan,
these wants in life that really add to quality of life with kids. But I
have a DVD player.
Right. I understand. Okay. And just because I think that it might make sense to give things up, it might not necessarily make sense in the client's mind, right? But as long as the client knows they can,
right? And
if they choose not to, as long as they've had that choice, and I think choice is what really matters.
Yeah. So then they sit down. You guys course out a plan of action, or do you guys handle the conversation with the debtors, or what makes it so? I guess, to be point blank, why does the client need you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. So the debt industry is actually quite an interesting industry that's very, very complicated, right? And so what's little known in the debt industry is that the majority of people that are in the debt industry, in one way, shape, or form are funded through creditor dollars, right? Or at least have obligations to creditors, right? So the approach that we take is the only person that we work for is the consumer. So my whole goal is to make sure that the consumer gets the best outcome possible, period. So if you want to use an analogy, right? It's like hiring an accountant to help you do your taxes, right? It's like hiring a lawyer to help you with your potential legal matter. It's like hiring a realtor to help you, get a good deal on a house. It's like hiring you to help them get a good financing on a vehicle. We do the exact same thing, but with debt.
Right. I gotcha. So. That makes total sense. Then you don't have to know all the inner workings. It's like, I go to someone I trust to get my hair done because, like I say, this is the picture. Can you make
Absolutely.
it look like that? And then she pulls out this blue gunk and I'm like, that don't look right to me.
Absolutely. And I know one of the approaches that we take that's a little different is that in every single consultation that we have, not only do we go through what we can do, I actually go through what competitors can end up doing as well. And so a client's really free to pick and choose whoever they want. And I tell most clients, at the end of the day, you can take everything that I've gone through in this consultation and you can implement it yourself, right? You don't have to pay me money to help you implement this. But when people actually see the value and understand how complex all this type of stuff is, like most people think that, filing bankruptcy, I just, go down and just sign my bankruptcy papers and it's over. Now, it can be that simple, but it's very risky to do it that way because there's a whole lot in the back end that can potentially go wrong if you don't properly plan these things. Just like buying a car, just like doing your taxes, just like, buying a house, right? And so we really want to make sure that people get the best outcome, period. And I think kind of the results show, right? So it's like 97% of our clients successfully complete their plans and get debt free. Whereas I think the last stats that were released in the industry, it's something like 30% of clients end up not completing their plans, which is quite
we see it all the
alarming
time.
stat. Yeah,
all the time we see it, uncompleted or after it was completed, post bankruptcy or post proposal, bad credit. It just breaks my heart because I know that person wasn't sitting across the table from someone most of the time.
Sure.
Not everybody, I guess I say this in my experience, and you can speak to this too. In my experience,
Sure.
The majority of people facing down a hard time had a life incident that happened to them. They never intend to be here. They're not lazy or don't want to pay their bills. They got stuck in a situation. Life handed them a shit dog, and they're trying to claw their way out of it. It really irritates my every world when people take advantage of that, which we see all the time. People I'm looking at as someone who takes a look at credit bureaus for auto lending. I'm looking at people that were advised to go bankrupt that I'm thinking, gosh, I can see this myself. I can see how this little restructuring here, someone at their personal bank, for God's sake, could have said, hey, like they say to me, if I'm going up to the teller and the lady's like, hey, did you know we have this new program? And if you put this over here, you'll save $5 more extra a month. And I'm going, send me the paperwork on that, because that sounds too good to be true. But I mean, like, why, people just get themselves into these situations, and people, and a lot of times we want to point the finger and say, you did this to yourself. But a lot of times it's bad. Somebody took advantage of somebody else and gave them bad advice. Yeah. So how do people protect themselves from that? Like, that's a conversation I have in my world all the time, because people come into my world thinking we're going to do something bad to our customers. So I've had a whole career of doing my best to overcome that, just being myself and genuine and have a real desire to just help people. How do you guys do that? How do you put that in front of your customers so that they know that they can trust you? And what are your thoughts on other, let's not be specific about the companies, but, like, is it true? Like, is it still something that consumers should be cautious about when they go and talk to somebody about debt restructuring or possibility of, proposal or bankruptcy or?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So it's to kind of go to your first point about how people can protect themselves.
I ramble.
No, it's good, right? No, it's great. So the first part about how people can kind of prepare themselves, right? And this is actually the conversation we were having right before we decided to go live, right? Is people really have to read the documents that they're signing, more importantly, understand what they're signing, right? And ask hard questions, right? Mm-hmm. If a client asks me, why should I hire you? That's a great question. Who do you work for? Where do you make your money? All of these types of things are really good questions to ask, because it can really help people make their decisions, right? And sometimes a client might not even know what question to ask. And so just simply taking a step back, doing a little research online can help as well, although you got to be careful with that because everybody's got an angle, of course, right? It can help you know what questions to ask, right? So, I think
what questions should we ask
in the debt restructuring world? Yeah, that's a good question, right? So I think kind of I think the biggest questions to end up asking is who works for who, right? That's probably the biggest confusion in the industry right now, and it's actually really interesting. There's a new association called the Canadian Debtors Association, which is to advocate for debtor rights, helping them get what they deserve. And actually, one of their rights is they want people to get paid for usage of their bureau when creditors use it for other purposes than lending. Interesting.
Oh.
Check it out. You go to debtorsvoice.org. This is what they're advocating for. But their biggest advocacy point right now is that they're really trying to demystify the industry, because who can you trust? Who works for who right now, right? I mean, you've got trustees, licensed insolvency trustees, you've got credit counselors, you've got debt consultants, you've got banks, and everybody is kind of screaming the same message, but what ends up happening?
Know
right?
your credit, check it often.
Right.
But okay, I remind me to get back to this point, because I want to keep going what you're saying, because we're seeing a lot of this interesting thing here.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So the biggest misconception, I guess, that a lot of people have is that, well, so for example, right, going bankrupt, right? So if you want to go bankrupt, you end up having to file a bankruptcy through a licensed insolvency trustee. Their job is essentially to ensure you're not committing fraud, and their job is to represent and make sure that the whole process is fair between you and your creditors. They actually have an impartial role. Right. And so they can't really advocate on behalf of the consumer exclusively. So if the consumer says, I want to file bankruptcy, and the trustee thinks that it's an okay outcome for both the creditors and the client, that's perfectly fine. They have no issues doing that. The client very well may have had another option out there. And it's not to the detriment of the trustee. There's really great trustees out there, don't get me wrong. But ultimately, their job is simply to file and administer the whole either proposal or bankruptcy process, right? So it's the biggest question is, who do you work for and how do you get paid, right? Those are probably the two biggest things, right? And for me, that's very easy for me to answer. I work exclusively for my clients, and I get paid by my clients, right? So period, right? And I'm not going to talk to how creditors end up getting paid, or how the competition rather ends up getting paid, if that's okay. But
no. That's cool, because this sort of swings into the next topic that I wanted to discuss with you. And this is, I don't know if you're seeing this a lot, but now I certainly am, where our clients feel, quite frankly, it's very false, feeling that they know and understand their credit because I'll take this chunk out.
Yeah, you cut out for a second.
Oh, my connection is unstable, it says. It's snowing in April, so I'm sure that there's something going on in the building here. So what I wanted to, I'll cut that chunk out. What I wanted to bring up to your attention was, in my world, what we're seeing is a lot of consumers that are saying, I know my credit's good. I know I get my report from a 123 platform, and I'm like, geez, that's a new one. And so I started
every day there's new ones.
Yeah. So you've got your own personal bank one, which I want to believe is the right one. But they have a vested interest in sending you information also. And then you've got all these different ones that creep up. So I thought, okay, well, there's been Credit Karma for a while. Yeah. And then I'm trying to think of some others as examples.
There's Borrowell, there's all the banks, and
everybody's got it on their phone. My credit's good.
Yeah, all the high interest, high risk payday lenders, they have all got little platforms for them as well. You know what? It actually sounds like you should be a member of the Canadian Debtors Association, because they're advocating for consistency across all this type of stuff.
Really?
Right?
I definitely will look into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's crazy. We have always been a believer, like you, in options and education. And then the consumers, they're smart people.
Yeah, absolutely.
People make very smart decisions if they have their options laid out in front of them. And I'm not trying to shove my own agenda down somebody's throat. But what I was finding is that all of a sudden we're getting a lot of people calling saying, my credit's good. I qualify for the best interest rate. I get my, but I did go bankrupt last year. And I'm going, okay, well, how does that work? So when we sit down and take a look at it, I'm realizing it, that they're getting their credit pulled from one of these sites. I think W5 did a investigative report
Yeah,
on
they've
this.
done
I
one
don't know if you've
recently.
seen it.
Yeah, honestly, like the numbers just are different no matter where you go. The information that you get is different no matter where you go. For example, Credit Karma reports consumer proposals as a bankruptcy, right? So clearly it literally is bankruptcy and then a consumer proposal, which is not the same thing, right?
Wow.
And so it's really, really difficult for a consumer to know what's right. So I know personally what I advocate is forget about the credit score. Personally, forget about the credit score. Pull your bureau from Equifax and TransUnion. Make sure the
Yes.
information is correct, right?
Yes.
It costs you nothing, and if you want your score, you can pay for it. That's perfectly fine. Credit's broken down into 5 main categories: your payments, how much credit you actually use in relation to your limits, how long you've had credit, the types of credit you have, and the inquiries that you have. Okay. Most people are only concerned about the payments and the inquiries, right? Which unfortunately is only equal to what, 50% of your score, 45% of your score, right? Which means that you could have those 2 categories absolutely perfect, but everything else horrendous. Yeah. And that means your credit's in the toilet. Right. So yeah, it's just about properly, you know what? It's honestly about education. It's about knowing what credit scores are actually comprised of and what it actually takes to increase them.
Yeah. I'd love for us to connect and get some literature for anybody watching. You probably have it on your website and stuff like that, but that is a cool piece of information right there, is to actually understand what makes your credit fit in what, am I good? Am I bad? Am I somewhere in the middle? Another point that I'm wondering what your thought process is on it. And, we see from our lenders all the time, they take a look at a credit bureau, and I'm dealing with the same person, the same income, the same credit bureau, the same credit history, totally different approvals. Like we're talking, I could have a span of 20% in the difference. So another factor that a lot of people don't realize is that, you have the power to see your credit bureau and see what it means, but you don't know how the lender's lending.
Absolutely.
That's a big piece of the equation. So, making sure that you're getting the right report. I couldn't agree with you more. Like TransUnion or Equifax, that's it, because that's who the lenders look at.
Absolutely. And there's no way in ensuring these third party, even the banks themselves are actually displaying all of the information. Right. So when you get your report directly from Equifax or TransUnion, you're seeing everything, right? And they're a little bit harder to read, but at least you're getting good information, right?
So David, I want to improve my credit.
Mm-hmm.
What can I do? What can I do today? I mean, today it's a tough one. I mean, people are just trying to hang on. So in no way do I need to preach, people need to be putting more stress on themselves. That's not what this is about. I think we're going to find a new normal. I think we're going to get back to normal. I think the cool thing about COVID-19, if there's one thing that's cool, is that we've all learned to appreciate different things about life and have a lot more gratitude. But, when we can see this, where people can get back to work, okay, we're getting our ducks in a row. We're in a bit of a trouble. It hasn't gone so crazy that necessarily they need to come to you. What can they do to get back up on their feet and just start going in the right direction?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to start off with a very boring answer that nobody's going to like. Okay. So I think that effectively rebuilding credit first starts with the sound financial platform, right? Mm-hmm. You have to make sure that you're basically spending less than you make, that you have a healthy savings. And by healthy, that's relative, right? For some people that might be $1,000. For some people that might be $100,000, right? And then from there, really, in order to build credit, you have to borrow money, and borrowing money involves interest, meaning that you have to have credit products, right? And so whether that's going out and getting a small secured credit card, whether that is, if you need a new car and getting a car loan, right? Like all of these types of things, you basically need to ensure you have credit. Now, it's not good enough just to have one credit product, right?
Okay.
When banks look at you, they want to see multiple credit products. And so what we preach is the rule of 222. And then because I'm me, I've added an extra 2 rules. So my 2 rules are you need to establish 2 credit products that are new.
Okay.
And remember, my credit rebuilding is if somebody's gone through restructuring. So when I talk about new credit products, that might not necessarily apply to somebody that hasn't gone through restructuring, right? So it's 2 credit products that have at least $2,000 limits. Now, those 2 things don't happen immediately. They could take a year to get both of them, okay? You want to have them for at least 2 years. And then my 2 extra rules are you want to use them on a monthly basis and you want to ensure they're paid off monthly.
Oh,
right?
Hold on now. That's a biggie.
Yes.
That's a biggie, especially
Absolutely.
our youth today. I'm not shitting on anybody, but I don't think anybody's told anybody this. You know, this is not part of our education system. Pay it off monthly. Use it,
Yes.
pay it off monthly.
Absolutely.
Which means you have to have the money.
Yes.
Use it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your limit means nothing.
Right.
Your limit's just a number.
Yeah, because there was another stat, I don't know, I won't say the exact stat, it was crazy high, you might know what it is. A lot of people, when we take a look at their actual take-home income versus a pre-tax income, most people, I thought it was 70 or 80%, they've spent up to, no. The debt ratio, okay, even if we take a look at regular lending, they'll oftentimes give you 60% of your, let's say you make 20 grand a year. Well, you're not taking home 20 grand a year. So
Absolutely.
how do you make up that credit card every single month? You go to dinner, I use my credit card. I get the points, at the end of the month, I pay it off. But I can't do that if I'm overspending.
Absolutely. Which is why starting with the Sound Financial platform is absolutely key in rebuilding credit, because yes, you can go out and get very temporary increases in your credit score. You can go and apply for a bunch of credit, use it for a few months, and your score will eventually improve as long as the payments are being made, right? And your balances are staying low. But the problem is that over time, if you're in the negative $500 every single month, well, those limits are going to start getting maxed out fairly quickly, which means that your credit's going to start dropping again, right? So sound financial practice.
Maxed out, what does that mean? So if I have a $2,000 credit limit, where should I keep it underneath? I mean, assuming I'm going to go after making sure it's paid off every single month. Let's say I go on a trip, I do the girls' trip.
Yes.
I'm going to pay it back.
That's right.
Where do I have to get it to so that it's not, having a huge impact on my credit?
Yeah.
Maxed out is like right to the rim, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we typically recommend that people don't exceed 30% of their limit. So if they have $1,000, no more than $300. Now I'm going to kind of put a little excerpt on this. You got to book a flight and it's going to cost $800. Book the flight, paid off immediately. You might see a temporary dip in your score that month if that amount even reports on the bureau as a balance. But the month after, you're fine. Right. So, and that's actually.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's actually a kind of a good point to make as well of when do you actually pay off your card, right? And so we hear all the time, and if you read online, it says wait until your billing cycle is over to pay off your card. I personally actually disagree with this practice, and the reason why is because there's a whole lot that can happen in the time that you spend the money and when that billing cycle ends up happening, right? So there's no real way to know the exact true way that credit scores are calculated, right? But best I can gather in looking up some people that have experimented with holding balances and these types of things, there's 2 best places to keep your balance at, right? So one is kind of at that 30%, just under, actually it was like 27 to 29%. The second best is 0, right? So I recommend that people just keep it at 0, because then you never have to worry about it. You literally walk into the store, you fill up your gas tank, for an example, and you go out and you go on your phone and you immediately pay it off. That way you're building credit and you haven't spent any money you don't have.
And so right now, COVID-19, everybody's maxed out.
Yeah.
I'm making real life decisions, which are, who do I pay this month? We've had calls coming in here to the dealership all the time. Certainly during COVID-19, just redirecting people to their banks because they have to make arrangements with their lenders. But you know, my pushback to them is, you know, this, I guess as an example, an automobile is what people need to get to work. And if that's your situation, you cannot, like, you can't afford to miss any payments. But the reality is people are missing payments right now.
Absolutely.
So where is the least impact if this is the choice that I'm in? You know, do I throw all the bills up on the table and pick the first one that falls, or is there?
You should make a game out of it. No,
I mean,
don't make
I don't
a
know.
game
Is
out of it.
there
It's a bad joke.
I mean, like, you can't have your phone turned off. That's a safety thing.
Yeah.
You got to get to work. If you're out of work right now, you're going to need the automobile to get to work, most likely.
Yeah.
You know, you got to keep the roof over your head. You got to keep the power on. So is it going to kill me when my credit card, you know, isn't paid on time all the time in the next 3 months or so?
Yeah. It's that's a really, really big question, right? I've always been a believer in, you have to make sure that your necessity expenses are paid. I don't consider a credit card payment a necessity if you can't pay your other bills, right? So, you know, if you're still working and you have to get to work, and you know, I would first look into deferring the payment, although there is some ramifications for that, of course. But if it's going to help you eat, by all means, go to town. But if you can still make that car payment and you can still eat, but you can't afford your credit card payments, I think at a certain point in time, you have to realize that, yes, my credit might get impacted during this process, but at least I'm going to be able to feed my family and provide for my necessities, because the last thing you want to do is get behind on those necessities, because, you know, they're necessities. You need them, right? You can't operate without it.
And just to stay focused right now and present and try to be, you know, with all the stress and everything, certainly we've experienced in this province and due to COVID-19, it's just a lot that people are handling right now. And so, you know, putting more and more stress on yourself about something that you're going to be able to dig out after, you know, hopefully. But I mean, we can't, you know, we can only control what we can control.
Yeah.
And, you know, the brain is such a powerful thing. You know, it's funny, I say to people all the time, the bank will know if you think about being late on this car payment and we're using it to rehab your credit. You know, it's like, okay, Kim, I really am going to want out of this. I really need a minivan. I know I got to prove to the bank that I can make the payments on this and get my interest rate lower. And I say to them, it's like they know, man, in the universe. Like, do not even think about being late on this car payment, because it'll kill my ability to be able to drop that interest rate in, you know, 8 months, a year, 18 months, or 2 years, whatever it is that their cycle's in. You know, moving out of COVID-19, I think the message for, you know, for me is that, from what I'm hearing too and learning from you, is that do what you can now. You know, try to handle the things that need to be handled on a day-to-day basis. You know, obviously, you nor I are giving anybody advice to just disregard and not pay their bills. But in a reality where you're staring down, okay, what are my necessities? What can I do?
Yeah, it's what are the priorities.
Exactly. And then is there hope for me if I've kind of hit the ditch coming out of this, and I got my job back and the income's coming in now, and, you know, I guess what you're saying is what you need to do then is then focus on and make those minimum, maybe more payments to get to that 30% range.
Yeah.
Get the debts paid down as much as possible. Go see you if you're like overwhelmed and don't even know where to start.
Well, and this is a good point, right? Is that I think that if somebody's listing and was struggling before this, and now they're struggling even more now, you're probably going to have to talk to a professional, right? Because if you're struggling before and now the situation is just going to be essentially magnified, you're going to want to talk to somebody.
Well, what if I can't afford to talk to somebody now? Let me hit you with a hard one right in your kisser.
Yeah.
What if I can't afford to, like, do you help me see that too?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
I might be thinking, I can't even afford to go talk to this guy. Is that why you guys offer the first session free?
Yeah, absolutely. And even our competitors and other industry professionals do the exact same thing, right?
Okay.
In almost every single instance, you're going to get a free consultation. There may be a rare exception to that. There, I can think of one name that I think they charge like $25 for an initial consultation, but by and large, most companies that provide, debt restructuring services in one way, shape, or form, it's a completely free consultation. And the majority of them are operating remotely right now, right?
Okay.
So for us, all our consultants are working from home. We're doing this type of meeting or on the phone. So we're still operating, and so are majority of competitors and other industry professionals, right?
That's awesome.
Obviously, I'd like it to be me, but you
Right.
might be living in the middle of nowhere and you might not be able to see me, but it is what it is, right?
I just say, look, you can deal with whoever you want. I'm the best. But I mean, go ahead.
This is just it, right? Really, all that I'm interested in is making sure that people actually do something with their situation, right? Whether it's through me, somebody else, it really doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, yes, I think I can help people get a better outcome, but any outcome is going to be better than where they're at right now.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's critical, because we're going to see a whole slew of people that are. I think the insolvency system is going to be overwhelmed after this. Maybe not immediately, but probably into the fall time. It's going to be saddening to see, because no one expected this. This isn't a controllable situation, right? It's the government shutting a whole bunch of people down, right or wrong, because I know a bunch of people have opinions on that, right? And which left a lot of people without work. And not only that, it's even further enhanced by being isolated at home. You think about people's mental well-being and how they cope with that. It's going to be devastating, right?
Yeah, there's a lot going on. Control what we can control, I guess, can't control the universe. We're seeing that right now with COVID-19. It shuts down the whole world. Can't control what your neighbor's doing. One of the things, I say to customers all the time is, you are definitely not alone. So many people are, experiencing what you're experiencing, and that's not to diminish what anybody's going through personally, but to let people know that there are solutions, that they're not alone, that somebody else has been there before. You've helped people through and navigate, probably pretty bad, stressful situations. I know I dealt with one of your customers, and they were just like, on the other side looking for a vehicle, and they were just like, man, you would not believe, like, you could see it on their face. And it was the day that they actually left your office.
Yeah.
So you could see on their physical face, I had met them the day before.
Love it.
And then they're sitting in front of it was almost like you left them with a homework project.
Yeah.
And they felt so good and empowered.
Yeah. And this is the whole goal, right? Is I got into this business and with the mindset that everybody that comes through a door is going to get the absolute right advice the first time, even if that means that I'm sending people to competitors, right? And actually, I don't want to say fairly often, but at least several times a month for the amount of people that come in, their best solution is with a competitor. Can I still help them? Sure, right? But do I think it would necessarily be ethical for me knowing that there's a better solution elsewhere? In my opinion, no.
It's funny you say that, because when you say, can I help them? No, not in your particular arena, but it's funny. I started to look at that differently from my standpoint also, and started to say to people, no matter what, I'm going to help you, because you did help them. You say, it's true. I can't, you're not in the right place. You want to get your, you want to get your hair cut and whatever. I shave legs. I know, bad analogy.
Sure.
But, I'm glad we had this time to talk so that I can point you in the right direction of so-and-so who's perfectly capable for that. I do that in my industry a lot also. You're just sitting in front of somebody and you're like, You know, actually, and my dealer partners aren't going to like this, but there's a lot of times where people sit in front of me and, you know, they're looking, staring down a truck, and I go, knowing what I know, you might be able to pick up a better loan at the franchise dealership for a truck, because I know
Yeah.
that they have a better rate on right now. I'm going to call, I'm going to call John at XYZ Motors, and let's get you an appointment there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it pays dividends moving forward, right?
Yes.
Because you're going to be empowering people to make the right decision. You're going to ethically feel good about it. You're going to be able to go to sleep and not feel like you
Yes.
potentially screwed someone over. And they're going to remember that, right?
Yes.
It's just good karma all around.
Yeah. It's
right?
good karma. And from a business perspective, you know, and I know we're running out of time here. I do want to touch on this because it's the whole mission of Under the Hood, really, is to not expose, but discuss what goes on in business, what's going on in marketing. What are the areas, as particular for me, of the automotive industry that people can educate themselves on? Credit, you know, vehicles, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the things that I think is coming, it's been coming before COVID-19. I just really believe that COVID-19 shutting down the whole world, okay, has really shaken enough of us all up to say, okay, what really matters? And what am I consuming? What am I doing? What are the choices I'm making? Does it align with who I am as a person, where I want to go, how I want to educate my kids? And so I'm finding that businesses, whether it's a marketing, I don't even know what the word is, not trick, whether it's just marketing or whether it's actually more good people in business saying, cut the crap. Like, I've been a cut the crapper in the car business my whole existence. Like, every dealer on the planet hated me for years. So I'd be like, cut the crap. Let's just talk about the truth to the customer. Yeah. I think the truth would make sense. Why are we making this shit up?
For sure.
So I think that this is a new breed where even like, I remember like, you know, not even 10 years ago, someone like myself who openly now says, the best closing trick I got is to tell the truth. People like before, people like, oh, that's mushy, mushy, girly, girly, boo hoo hoo, you know, ooey, ooey, you know, get in your flower truck. Now I think what we're about to see is all kinds of businesses just like yours saying to people, this is the problem. This is how we help. This is our solution. Come and talk to us. And you know, we just want to help. Like, we just want to help you. No identifying problems and making shit up and putting it in front of people. It's like, there's enough problems. So I think the entrepreneurs are really starting to think that way, especially, you know, the youth, just like you did, just like I did, and sat there one day and went, wait now, if I'm in this secure job, D&D, benefits, everything, and I look around and all my friends are struggling with debt, it's like, holy shit, this is a problem. Somebody's got to solve it. I'm getting into the business. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I just went on a rampage there, but any thoughts on that? Like that had to come out of my system. It was toxic.
Yeah, I think business in general is shifting towards very much an educational approach. I think the days of, you know, the hard sell and like, you know, all these psych tricks that you learn in these types of courses, right? I think
the new car. Do you smell it?
Yeah, right. I think a lot of that stuff is going away. And I think people actually dislike it now, actually, you know, and I know we had this conversation kind of when we first met and kind of subsequent meetings that, you know, like, for example, in the car industry, most people don't like the car industry because of how it ends up going along, right? You know, I would assume the same is true in the insolvency industry, right? Like a lot of people are not necessarily big fans of it, right? And so it's like, how do you change that? How do you empower the customer to make a decision and know the decision? It's not make them think they're making a decision, but actually truly make sure they realize the options and know what they can do, and then for them to make a decision, not influenced by these crazy tricks left, right, and center. I think that's where business is going.
So, cut the crap. Nobody's got time for it anymore. People are smarter than that. You know what, and formats like this, just the internet alone, and then, you know, more people just getting out and talking about every different subject matter. It's really, truly refreshing. It's exciting in a, what may feel like a not so exciting time, but I think this is when the good rise.
I really think so. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's going to be interesting. I think a lot of businesses are going to be morphing their delivery models. And I think that a lot of people are thinking now about how people actually want to receive their service rather than the way they thought that they wanted their service to be received, right? So it's interesting, and I know we're getting slightly off topic here, but before COVID, I was actually looking at providing extra value to clients by offering a webinar exclusively for clients to talk more about credit rebuilding and money management. So we sent out a survey to clients and we said, hey, you know, is this something that you'd be interested in doing? Because we understand that having to take time out of your day to come into the office during work hours, which means they're also supposed to be working, you know what I mean? Wouldn't actually work out that well. And the overwhelming majority of them were like, yeah, absolutely, let's do it. So it's actually become quite a hit. And then COVID happened literally like the week after. And so now we're kind of toying with the idea of, okay, maybe we're going to make this the staple way of consuming this content, and then offer kind of the in-person stuff eventually down the road when things open for those that need that extra support, right?
Have you looked at the Teachable platform?
No, so we use get technical. We use software called Webinar Jam. So it allows you to upload PowerPoint presentations, handout, do polls. If you really wanted to like pre-record stuff, say you had to take a trip, you could pre-record it and play it. You can get pretty in depth with it all.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Anything else, David, we need to throw out there, or what else? We covered a whole lot. We went high, low, medium, slow.
Yeah, we were bouncing around on our list here. I think that
David, I gave him a list and I said, hey, what do you think about these topics? I don't think we talked about one of them.
Yeah, we hit 3 of them. I think that just the biggest key is for people to just be aware of what they're doing. Be conscious in the situation. If you know there's a problem, tackle it, address it, right? Don't wait until all this is over to start dealing with things. And whether that's, you know, needing a vehicle, whether that's going through debt restructuring, whether that's, you know, you wanted to start that fitness program that you've been wanting to start for a while, you know, just get on it. I'm being a little bit of a hypocrite there because I need to get back to exercising, and I've been talking about it for weeks.
Something's on the brain, David. Something's on the brain. I'm in my first week. I can't put my arms back here, but hey.
That's right. One day.
It's the only thing about these meeting people on Zoom. You're like trying to.
Oh, there's no great angle. No, absolutely not.
You're like, holy shit.
Yeah. Without a doubt.
So how do people get in touch with you, David?
Yeah, absolutely. So the best place to go is halifaxdebtfreedom.ca, or give us a call, 902-482-9748. Awesome. Thank you so much for being a part of my very first episode. When am I going to get you back? Let's see. Episode 1. This is about accountability for me. Yes. If this is 1, when am I getting you back? We need to do a post-COVID-19. So as soon as absolutely. As soon as everybody's back to life, which is going to be soon, everybody needs to hang on. We'll need to do another one. So by then, hopefully I only have another episode in. So I'll see you in episode 3. Absolutely. Episode 3 it is. Sounds good. Okay. Post COVID-19, I'm reaching out. I want to know what's going on with you guys over there at Four Pillars, and how things are panning out. Fantastic. Have another quick chat. Awesome. Thanks so much for being on, David. No, thank you. Yes, definitely. Bye. Still recording? Are we good?